and some how to define state, and we know that using that knowledge we can say okay, how many states for the object, and how will the state change in response to some events. But state diagram would be of little use if they just describe events. It means that we don't know what kind of behavior for each event or for some states. It means that some behaviors should be specified for different events. It means a full description of an object must specify what the object does in response to events. It means that the response is behavior. So behavior is also very important for state diagrams. An effect is a reference to a behavior that is executed in response to events. It means effect is used to describe the behavior. And an activity is the actual behavior that can be invoked by any number of effects. It means for describing for some events, for the occurrence of some events, we need to specify what kind of activities should be performed. For example, for the disconnect phone line. For example, when you put down your when you have finished your phone call and you put down the phone, then it will, this is an event, and then it will, there should be some behavior. It could be an activity, for example, disconnect the phone line. So disconnect phone line is an activity, and it is the actual behavior that in response to the event of put down the phone. And an activity may be performed upon a transition, upon the entry to or exit from a state, or upon some other event within a state. It means that when there is a transition or entry to or exit from a state, or some other events in the state, there could an activity could be performed in response to them. And activities can also represent internal control operations. We know that just now those kind of activities can have some counterpart in the real world. For example, the disconnect the phone line. It is an activity in the real world, but sometimes it can also be that kind of activity in the programming, in the implementation itself. For example, the setting attributes or generating other events. And for example, the incremental and internal counter every time a particular event occurs. And the UML notation for an activity is a slash. It is a slash and the name of the activity following the event that caused it. This is the event, red button done, and this is slash, this is an activity. Display pop-up menu. This figure shows the state diagram for a pop-up menu on a computer. So it has two states, idle and menu visible. When it is in the idle, when the red button is done, it will display the pop-up menu. It will go, the state will transition. The state will transition from idle to menu visible. In the menu visible, if the right button is up, then it will erase the pop-up menu. This is the slash following the activity. So erase pop-up menu is an activity. This activity is in response to the right button up. So this is an effect. This is an effect in response to right button up, and the activity. There could be activity not only for this kind of event on the transitions among between different states. It can also be in response to the event within the state. For example, for this one, this is a kind of self transition. Self transition. It means cursor move. It means when the cursor moves, it will not, the states will not change or not, and the effect for this response for this activity for this event is highlight menu item. So it means that there could be effect for events on transitions between activity and the same activity, between different states or the same states. And do activity is a very special activity. It is also a kind of activity, but it is different from some those common activities. It means a do activity is an activity that continues for extended time. It means it will last in a specific time interval. A do activity can only occur within a state and cannot be attached to a transition. It means the do activity can only be within a state. It means inside the state and it will last an extended time. It means in the paper jam state, this do activity will be performed until there is an event makes the state change. That means the current state, if the current state is the paper jam, it will flash warning light until the current state changes. For example, until the current state from leave the paper jam. And for example, for other similar do activity, for example, displaying a picture on a television screen, it is also a kind of do activity. And a do activity may be interrupted by an event that is received during its execution. For example, for the paper jam, in this state, if it got an event, for example, the paper jam soft, it means it will leave the paper jam state to the normal. It means in response to the event of paper jam soft, it will finish the do activity. It means it will not flash the warning light and it will go to a normal state. Maybe in the normal state, another do activity will be performed. For example, keeps the green light on and so on. And entry and exit activity is another two kind of special activities. As an alternative to showing activities on transition, you can bind activities to entry or to exit from a state. It means that it is very common to add activities on transitions, and because usually for the transitions there is an event. Usually the transition is checked by an event, and the activity then the activities will be will follow the event in response to will be specified for the event. And but sometimes we can also specify the event, the activity should be the activity should be done whenever entry the event entry the state or leaving the state. And for example, all transitions entry the state will perform the same activity. It means for the if you have specified an entry activity for the state, all transitions from different source state into this state will perform the same activity. And an entry or exit activity is shown inside the state box following the keyword entry or exit and a slash. It is also displayed displayed inside the state box. And whenever the state is entered or exit by any incoming or outgoing transition, the entry or exit activity is performed once. It is different with the do activity. For do activity, it will last for a specific time interval, but for the entry and exit, it will only be performed once. An entry activity is equivalent to attaching the activity to every incoming transition. Means that it is the same. It means it can be two different kind of descriptions for the entry activities. You can, for example, for a state diagram with entry activity, you can also transfer it to a state diagram without entry activity by attaching the activity of the entry by attaching the entry activity to every incoming transition. But there will be if there are multiple transitions, entry transitions to this state, you will need to label the activity multiple times. For example, this is the control state diagram for the control of a garage door opener. The user generates deprice events. For example, at first, when the door is closed, and if the user depresses the button and the motor will up, the motor up is activity or behavior or effect in response to the deprice. Then it will, for example, after 1 or 2 minutes, the door will be in the opening state. It means it will no, it doesn't need 1 or 2 minutes. Whenever you depress the button motor up, then it will be in the opening. And when the door is opened completely, the activity is motor off. It means you have turned off the motor and the door is open. And when the door is open, when you depress the button, the motor will pull the door down, and it will be in the closing state. When the door is closing, if you depress the button, then the door will open again for safety reasons. And if you don't depress a button, it will, and when the door is closed, the activity is motor off, means turn off the motor. Okay, this is state diagram with activities with activities and transitions between states And we can also express the same meaning using this state diagram with entry activities. It means that whenever you depress the button, it will go to the opening. In the opening state, it will do the entry activity. It means do the motor up, and when the door is opened, it will do the motor off. And when the door is open, it's completely open. When you depress, it will go to the closing. In the closing, it will do the motor down, and when the door is closed, it will turn off the motor. So it is the same, because for every for the opening, you can see that for the opening, when you depress from here and here are two transitions into this state. If you don't use the entry activity, you need to specify the activity for this transition and this transition. They are all motor up. It means that whenever it is for these two, so because for these two transitions it means for all the transition into this state, they do the same activity, so they can be transferred into an entry activity. So it means that the entry activity is equivalent to specify activities for all entry activities. Specify the activity is the same activity for all entry transitions. These two transition into it. It means they are the same. It means this is the entry, and it is the same with these two activities on the transitions. It's like entry activity is equivalent to attaching the activity to every incoming transition. Attaching the activity to every incoming transition. And self-transition, if a state have multiple activities, they are performed in the following order. This is the order of executing activities. First, the incoming transition, then entry activity, two activities, exit activity, and activity on the outgoing transition. This is the order to perform activities. And there's a difference between an event within a state and a self-transition. For this is an event within a state. It means that within the state, for the event shut down, you need turn off the motor. It means that when it gets the event shut down, it will turn off the motor. And for this, it is a self-transition. It means that when the cursor moved, you need to highlight the manual item. This is two different kind of representation, and this is called self-transition. And only the self-transition will cause the entry and exit activity to be executed. But for this one, this is the in-state activity. It will not invoke the entry and exit activities. Okay, this is the completion transition. Often the sole purpose of a state is to perform a sequential activity. It means that usually for activities, the activity is to perform some a state is to perform some activity. For example, like this, in the announcing state, it will do play announcement, and after this announcement is completed, when the activity is completed, a transition to another state is fair. It means that when in the announcing, when the do activity finished, the transition to the recording will be fed automatically. It means an arrow without an event name indicates an automatic transition. It means that if the transition is not labeled a name, not labeled by a name, it means this is an automatic transition. It means when this state finish the activity, it will go to another activity automatically. Why this is called completion activity? It is because they are triggered by the completion of activity in the source state, triggered by the completion of this activity. By this means the source activity, so it is called completion transition. Okay, and this is a chapter summary. This is a state diagram for phone line with activities. Previously, we have studied the state diagram for the phone line, but there's no activities. Here we have added some activities. For example, when on hook, it will disconnect the line, and in the dial it will do some dial, and in the connecting, it will find connection. In the ringing, it will do ring bell, and when the call phone answers, it will connect the line. So this is all the activities added. This is all the effect activities in response to these events. And when the call phone hangs up, it will disconnect the line. And when the recorded message, it will play message. In the warning, it will also perform the do activity. In the timeout, it will also perform the do activity. In the warning, I will play message. In the busy tongue, it will do slow busy tongue, and in the faster busy tongue, it will play faster busy tongue. And this is a summary for this chapter. We have studied the state diagram we have studied the state diagram in this chapter. And events and states are two elementary concepts in the state modeling. An event is an occurrence at a point in time. Event is an occurrence at a point in time, and a state is an abstraction of values and links of an object. And each object usually can be divided into several states according to the combination of different values, attribute values, and links. And events represent points in time, while states represent intervals of time. For the state, it is an interval of time. For example, in the warning state, it may last several tens of seconds, and an objective may respond to certain events when it is in certain states. And there are several kinds of events, that is, signal event, change event, and the time event. Signal event means sending some signals from one object to another. A change event means that when some Boolean expressions change from false to true, and a time event means that when an absolute time comes, or when a time of interval has finished. And a transition is an instantaneous change from one state to another, and is caused by the occurrence of an event. For example, when you off hook, it will come transitions from idle to dual tone. And an optional guard condition can cause the event to be ignored. It means that if the guard condition does not satisfy, then the event will be ignored. And an event is a reference to a behavior and effect that is cued by objects in response to an event. For example, all of these are effect, and the activity is the actual behavior that can be invoked. And for example, for the disconnect line, there are activities and they can be invoked by any number of effects. It means in the state diagram, the activities may be invoked by different any number of